I apologize. I like to start with music, but I don't know what the hell happened there. It just started getting crazy. I'm terrible at multitasking and the technology, but you notice I got a cool little green screen behind me here, and that's kind of cool. But yeah, weird technical difficulties. My apologies, folks. I was trying to. Am I muted again? No, I should be good. Should be good. There we go. Yeah, I'm doing spaces and YouTube tonight. So bear with me. But yeah, man, bummed that that music didn't work out. That's a great song. That's a guy called BJ Fisher. I had a chance to meet him down at Confluence in Texas, and that song of his is just beautiful. The lyrics are just it's about being a dad, and it's really cool. But I'm sorry I completely botched that by the sound bouncing back. So yeah, here I am. It's been a while. Um, Folks on YouTube haven't seen you guys in a long time. You haven't seen me in a long time. I've been doing Twitter Spaces a lot though, just because they've been kind of convenient and non-committal. So I've been able to, if I'm going to get out in the public, it's been there. But we are doing this tonight on Spaces and YouTube. And yeah, so people on YouTube probably haven't seen me in a while, but people on Twitter are kind of seeing me because I'm doing the Spaces and stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna get into a bunch of shit tonight. And yeah, maybe I'll start with just a bit of an update on myself. I've been had some stuff go down in our family. Don't need to get into the details, but it's been one of those things where you have to just pretty much drop most things that you're doing and be there to help. I'm being kind of vague. I don't because I don't need to put things out there to, I don't care to talk about my personal stuff in the public, but I haven't done YouTube in a while because I've just had a lot of shit going on in my life. And thank goodness I've been in a sort of a good spot that I could just commit to that. So that's why you're not seeing a lot of stuff from me lately. Haven't been streaming. Usually I stream more in the winter. Um, but this project behind me is was a big push in the fall because I wanted to get my family moved into the house there, that this one here that we've been building. This whole thing, I mean, this whole project has been a 3-year project, but that house has been three, well, was yeah, in a way, three construction seasons, really. I took a year off one of those years, or almost a year, at least a year off the house. But so it was a big push to um, get us into that house, a big push. And it required a lot of time and a lot of just cranking, being organized, making money to paying for all the stuff. I don't have any big debt on this place, which is pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet. I've been able to just kind of when we sold our house in Kelowna in 2021, that really did a lot up here. And so it was definitely the biggest chunk of money spent at once. But as you know, if you've been involved in construction, it always takes more. I don't even want to tell you how much more I spent this year than I thought I would. It's just, I'll tell you this, it was 100. I've spent this year, I spent 100% more than I thought I would. And last year we had this house up to lock up. So last year, or last going into last winter, actually, no, it wasn't fully locked up. It was windows and doors, roof, like steel and everything, just not insulated. So not, I don't know if that's considered quite lock up, but it was close. Um, and so that's where we were last winter. And then this spring we just went at it. I had less of a construction crew this spring, two guys full time, and then sub trades, plumbers, HVAC, electricians, kind of coming in and out, drywall, stuff like that, finishing stuff, cabinet guys. So now we're living in the house, which is sweet. It's still not completely done. It actually this photo was taken in September. But the house actually right now with the state that we're in looks no different from the outside because it's the inside that's done. I haven't sided it yet. I started to. But yeah, it's a big project. Would I do it again? Hell no. But it's definitely a bucket list kind of thing. So um I definitely feel like check, big bucket list check. Um, and so yeah, my life has been very, very busy, and because of our little family emergency thing, yeah, it's been even crazier. So I haven't been making content, and to be honest, I've kind of shifted my career. I've shifted um, many times in my life. I'm a pretty adaptable guy, but I've kind of gone back to just being more of a consultant and problem solver than being a content creator. And I've been really enjoying that because I've been making videos on YouTube for over 10. Actually, I think it's as of this month, it's been 10 years. So I think I started January 2014, or maybe it was even December 2013, but yeah, whatever, same thing. So it's been 10 years doing this, but all the while I've been doing this stuff, I've always been doing other things. And so um, I've kind of gone back to just working. And there's actually some that's going to rope into our conversation even tonight, just about the way I think things are going. And I've kind of always tried to just lead by example and just do and just demonstrate, hey, this is what I do. Take it for what it's worth. If you think it's great, great. If you don't, all the power to you, whatever. Um, but I've always just tried to kind of lead by example. And a big trend that I see coming, and it's going to rope into this whole conversation tonight as we talk about Canadian sovereignty or American annexation. I like the title of that, though it's not really annexation, but whatever. Um, is that there's this dichotomy of the way we could go with things, and one is to continue on. I'm getting really macro here, and then I'll kind of bring it down, and we'll riff for a while, and we'll bundle it all up. Um, but you can go along with everything, or you can kind of get out of the matrix in one way or another. And one way to do that is to get into the private in some way or another. And that term has a lot of connotation. Um, but how it pertains to the way things are going, it could just be that if you don't get into the private in some way or another, you're going to be roped around or pulled into whatever the hell's coming. And for a while, that'll probably be okay. But eventually, there might be a great turning point where people just have to say, hey, you're either with the New World Order or you're without. And I'm definitely without. So um, I've started to think about my life, because it's kind of if you make so I've made my living as a content creator officially since it started in 2016. I wasn't making money off YouTube for years. But then 2016, when my book came out, I put out an online course. Then I started to be able to make a living online, and that's a very scalable way to make a living. But it's also a very vulnerable way to make a living in a way because if the machine doesn't turn on, or they decide to turn you off, you can lose it all. And there's been many content creators out there who have lost a lot of their shit from speaking up. And I didn't want to be one of those guys. And so I've been sort of diversifying myself away from that so that if that happens, then I'm just like, whatever, I'm just doing my own thing somewhere else. I've also spent a lot of time to set myself up too. So, you know, um, I'm fairly prepared for that outcome. Um, my homestead's far from perfect and there's still got a lot of shit I want to do on it. But, if the lights were to go out tomorrow everywhere, we'd just kind of keep going up here. We'd be able to muddle through, and getting more and more comfortable too. We were living in this little cabin here for the last 3 years when we sold our house in Kelowna, which is a fairly nice house. Like it was like single family home built in the 70s, but we renovated it and it was fairly nice, comfortable, modest. Um, but we sold that. We sold at the top of the market to go and live in this little shack here for the last 3 years. And it was quaint for a while, but it started to suck. Like the beginning of this winter just sucked. The cabin is, let's say, 800 square feet. There's one bedroom. There's a little loft space up top in that peak, and then there's like a living room on the side with the wood stove. And the house is horrible insulation. Um, and I renovated. I put new windows in before we moved in fully. Um, but yeah, it was not comfortable. Compost toilet, 5 gallon bucket, uh, terrible shower, terrible bathroom, um, just not comfortable living situation. Great if you're visiting, great, anybody who comes to visit us now can stay in there. It's awesome. But a family of four living in that little cabin for 3 years, it was rough. And I'm in my garage now, which was actually, this is in the greenhouse here. I built this first when we started on the homestead because this is off grid. So in order to even pump water, I had to have electricity. And I probably could have run a generator for longer in retrospect to save some money up front. But I built that structure so that I could have a place to work, grow food, but we also had that cabin to live in. So, my wife was game at the time. But yeah, it got old. And I never, the beginning of this winter, me and the kids and my wife were all just like, my God, because it's like hand washing dishes every night. And again, yeah, first world problems, right? Okay, but bear with me. Hand washing dishes every night in a tiny little kitchen with small sink, just shitty infrastructure everywhere, countertops, everything. Um, Taking out the composting toilet every single day, and a lot more work into wood and fire because the house is so inefficient. So like if that wood stove goes out, like it gets cold fast, especially in the dead of winter, which we're in right now. Um, so now in the house, it is so much more comfortable because the house is extraordinarily efficient and it's got R80 ceilings. The upstairs walls are R40, the downstairs walls are R60. All the windows are triple pane, triple gasketed German windows and doors. Um, I can and the house has one day I'll do like I've got this off-grid course coming out hopefully soon, but my life circumstances have prevented me from finishing that. But I do have this course coming out where I will show all the mechanics of this home because it's pretty cool, like what I've been able to do with it. Um, I've got everything has redundancy in the house. So it has a central air system, HVAC system, like most houses, but it's got a dual fuel furnace. So on one side of the furnace, it's propane, and I can toggle between the two. And then the other, it's a heat pump from electricity. So on sunny days in the winter, as long as it's above -10 outside and I have excess solar, I can heat the home with electricity, which is free when the sun's available. If I don't have sun available, like the last 2 months, it's been socked in cloudy for 2 months. And sometimes at our ridge that we're on here, when the when it's warm and the cloud inversions are kind of like hovering around in the valleys, they push up against us and we get like socked in. That's a term that if you know any helicopter pilots say it's because you can't fly through near the mountains because it's socked in. It's too dangerous. You'll hit stuff. But that's what it's like up here for a period of time. Now we're past that part of the winter now, but so the furnace can run propane, and I can store a lot of propane, so I can just okay, easy heat. And then I've got wood stoves, two wood stoves in the house. And the downstairs, I've got a Blaze King stove, um, really good catalytic converter wood stove that can heat the basement really well and even really heat the whole house because the heat will kind of migrate upstairs to the staircase. But I've also got this badass wood cook stove. It's called a JA Roby in the upstairs, and this thing fucking kicks ass. Like I love this stove. It has a catalytic converter as well. And so with this one stove, I can heat the whole house because we're not downstairs yet. My kid, I put my kids' bedrooms downstairs, but they're not. finished yet. So we're all just sleeping upstairs, and it's still twice as much space as we had in the cabin. So it's very comfortable. But I got this wood cook stove going, and I can cook on it. I'm just right in the middle of plumbing this domestic hot water radiator to the side of it, and then that'll connect to my electric hot water. And so with this one stove, I'll be able to heat the house, cook, and heat hot water without any electricity. So I've got this manual way of pumping electricity. I built down in this right over here, in the bottom corner of my house. I built these rainwater tanks this year that are buried, and they're all finished now. And they catch all the water from the whole structure. The whole structure all goes into these rain tanks. And so I always the tanks are always full, even though we're in a boreal, very dry climate. It's and sorry for people in the space. I'm talking about the image that I'm sitting. That's my backdrop. So excuse me if you don't catch the references. Um, but so I've got this way of having water without electricity because I can manually pump it, and I've got a line underneath the house, underneath the slab of the house that goes into the rainwater tanks. And so I can manually pump water. So the house has all these crazy redundancies, and it's I don't know if it's the ultimate off-grid home, but it's getting pretty close. So that's consumed a lot of my life, just getting that. And I just really didn't want to have my wife and kids spend another full winter in the cabin. And so my life up until Christmas was a real fucking grind, a real grind getting us in there. And I was laser focused on making that happen. So I did. We did, and we're in there. We're comfortable now, and so it's been great. So, but yeah, so let's get into the space. Let's get into the subject matter. This is a subject I've been thinking on a lot lately, and I've gone in and out of a bunch of different Twitter spaces, and I kind of wanted to do my own, just so I could consolidate all of my thoughts and predictions in one place. Because yeah, food for thought, food for thought, and eventually I'll let other speakers come in and stuff in the space, but I'm just gonna riff for a while and kind of do it old school like I used to with the streams. Not really paying too much attention to the chat because I don't want to get side railed. Sometimes when I want to talk about a bunch of stuff and then I get too multitasked, it just goes off the wayside. So we got just under 300 people in the stream. Smash the like, folks. Get it out there. Same in the space. Share the space. Um, and let's get more folks in here. We're going to talk about some heavy shit. So all this kind of talk about Canada being absolved into the United States lately has been pretty interesting because it has brought up a lot of conversations that I've been trying to have with people since 2017. And that's the conversation of sovereignty and what does it mean to live in this world? And if somebody can just sell you, well, what does that mean? So for example, Donald Trump is out there and he's kind of trolling, which is what he does. But he's also a master marketer and deal maker. And so he's in a way, he's kind of probing the deal. But he's putting it out there that, hey, we should buy Canada, we should buy Greenland. And, what I've been saying about this is that, um, well, hold on a second. If the US can just buy Canada, what does that mean? And yeah, I've been trying to say this stuff for since 2017. I started that podcast called Liberty on the Land. I did it for, I don't know, a year, and then I kind of just stopped doing it. And but those conversations are really good. If you're interested in sovereignty and you're interested in some of the stuff that you've heard me talk about over the years about the law, those podcasts are great. The guests are amazing. The only place it is, I think they let the website go down. Just forgot to renew it. And it was never really a part of my business enterprise like Freedom Farmers, so it was just never something that got taken that seriously. Um, and so it just kind of died. But they're still on BitChute, if you go to BitChute and you type in, I think it's under Urban Farmer Curtis Stone, or maybe just search Liberty on the Land, and you'll find them. But these conversations are important, and the thing that's really interesting right now is that yeah, Trump's saying let's buy Canada, and I'm kind of been going, well, fuck, man. Um, Guys like Alex Jones were calling out uh, the North American the North American Union, or the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is what it was called for a period of time, a long time ago. And how come nobody's calling it out now? Because that's literally what's happening. It's literally what's happening. And so, um, why would why would people be okay with that? But I'm going to talk about a lot of different considerations on why this will be good and bad. Um, but my gut reaction was, well, fuck that. You know, if the U.S. is just going to buy Canada, let's just declare our sovereignty now. And what I've been referring to, and what I'm seeing, this is coming up. Like, people are having these conversations, and this is the idea of a constitutional convention. People are having these conversations right now. They're going, well, who's the crown? Why should we care? Uh, Trump wants to buy Canada. Why should we care? We're our own people. How is it that somebody can just buy you? And it really ropes into a bigger conversation about, yeah, how is that right? How is that how is that possible? Well, it's possible because it's all a big matrix scam based on money, and we're all roped into it in one way or another, directly and indirectly. Canada's roped into the United States. I mean, one way that's really easy to point out in evidence is the securities. Um, I've talked about this many times, but it's worth repeating. You can go on the United States Securities Exchange Commission website, and you can put in Canada into the company filings, and you'll see Canada, and all the securities are registered at Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. And you'd have to ask yourself, well, why is that? Well, it's why exactly? I'm not exactly sure, but what it does mean is that our asses, the assets of our securities, which is all comes from that birth certificate of yours, the all caps name, are all registered down there. And you ask yourself, what, well, who the fuck can own you? Well, some really wealthy Jewish bankers, essentially, own your estate, right? And so it's all down there. Um, and so, in a way, Canada is already part of the United States in one way or another. Um, and there's just these formalities about, with the Queen and all this stuff. And so, um, I can see that this could happen very easily. And I think people will cheer it on, frankly. I think, I think what's happened, and to get to where we are, where basically uh, a deal maker can just basically say, "Hey, I want to buy Canada." Um, it's the Hegelian dialectic. It's the problem reaction solution. So a trend you could, maybe you'll agree with me on this, maybe you won't, but a trend that is pretty observable um, over the last, call it, since the COVID show. Um, we've had all the politicians of the major Western countries be absolute um, arrogant, gaslighting, tyrannical, woke leftists. Um, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, Macron, Emmanuel Macron in France, um, what's her name in Germany, uh, whatever her name is. She's gone now, I think, but she's ruined that country for a long time. Germany has just been absolutely wasted forever. But of course, Trudeau in Canada, Biden in the United States. Um, how is it just a coincidence that all of those politicians are absolute clowns? And by clowns, I just mean everybody hates them. and what they did was they created populism. So they created the problem by installing leftist, woke politicians that are pushing policies that nobody wants, that very few want. They manufacture the demand for them just through aggressive propaganda that we've all witnessed forever. Um, they manufactured the problem. It caused a reaction, which was populism, and now that populism is is going to take us into the solution. And I think the New World Order plays it. They play all sides. If you read stuff about them, like I have for many, many years, you know that that's what they do. They control the opposition, all that stuff, you name it, but they play all scenarios on both sides. And and one thing they did is they probably wanted Hillary Clinton to get in. Of course they did. And if she would have got in, they would have had a whole bunch of things that they would have done. Maybe we would have been worse off. Maybe, who knows? But she didn't. Trump got in, and then that sort of kicked off real populism in the United States. I mean, as that hadn't been seen in a very long time prior to that. And I think if I were just to take a guess, and I don't really care to put anything on this claim, but just take it for what it's worth. If you want to call me wrong, that's fine. Um, I think for a time it's possible that Trump and the MAGA thing. Well, Trump and MAGA are kind of different things, really, but um, Trump did what wasn't necessarily part of the New World Order at that point. I think I noticed a real shift, especially after October 7th. I noticed a real shift with populism, and it seemed like that was the moment that it really got psyoped. That the alternative conservatives became the mainstream conservatives because they all agreed to kiss the tiny hat, if you will. And Trump and Elon both went to the wall, put on the hat, touched the wall, did that whole dog and pony show, song and dance. And it really and then the assassination attempt on Trump, which to me, I don't know, it's at least my eyes just looked staged. It just looked like a WWF thing, like Trump had done many times in the past. It just seemed like a complete staged event to galvanize, and the purpose of it was to galvanize the right. And it did a really good job of that. And then now we have all these, because there's no more mainstream media, they're dead. The legacy media is dead. It is all on X now, and it's all these high profile blue check accounts that basically, and if you pay attention to, so I don't need to talk shit. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about the names. Um, but they just parrot the same fucking talking points, just like those clips. You've all seen that clip of that mainstream media talking heads where one of them is reading off a prompter, and then another one comes in, and then next it's a chorus of them all singing together, repeating the same fucking narrative. That's what's happening on X now, because it is the media now. Um, and it really seemed like after Elon went to the wall and did that whole thing, that to me that seemed like that was it. And then we've got just um, all of these pundits that are just saying, go along with this, go along with that. And it's just, as I'm watching this thing play out with Trump trolling Trudeau and all that, and it's been funny. Like I, I do enjoy the right wing memes. I do like them. Um, I can't deny, like that one I posted this on X today. I don't know if it went viral or not, but it's like an AI video of all the Hollywood celebrities like crying as their homes burn down, and it's fucking unbelievable. I'm like, I posted, this is the best thing that's come out of Hollywood ever. It's funny, and so I do enjoy the right wing memes and stuff like that and the takes, but we're being psyoped like crazy right now. This is just manufacturing consent like Noam Chomsky could have never imagined. When he wrote that book, Manufacturing Consent, it was about how the mainstream media, and I used to be into Chomsky. I read that book many, many years ago, probably over 20 years ago. But how the mainstream media just creates consent by just making you think that everybody else is believing this thing. So you just go along to get along. I forget what that experiment is. Was it the Milgram experiment or that one where they put all these people in an elevator and then everybody's in on the joke except one guy and they all turn around and then the other guy's like the door's here, but they just follow suit. It's kind of this idea that people just on average will go along to get along. And so today you can manufacture that consent like we've never been able to do that before, which is very, very interesting. And also really kind of creepy when you think about how AI fits into that. And I think that's where we're going to see some really sketchy shit at some point soon. I'll get into that a little bit later because there's a bunch of stuff I wanted to say on that, a bunch of things that I can see happening. Um, but yeah, so Trump, he's got this idea out there and it's got a lot of people talking about it. And you can, and so again, going back to, when was it? 2000, it was like 2000 and between maybe 2006 and 2009, there was a lot of talk about the North American Union and the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And a lot of truthers were just up in arms, like, fuck this, fuck this. But isn't it interesting right now? Trump is literally pitching the same thing. It's just calling it something else, but it's the same thing. And it's crickets with the mainstream truthers. Not mainstream is in like, not that, and they're not even truth. They're hardly truthers anymore, but the mainstream, they're mainstream now, but the alternative right, none of them are calling this out. But if it would have been under Obama, and if any of them were around long enough for that, they'd been calling out. Alex Jones certainly was. But I'm seeing guys like Corbett and the real OGs, even David Knight. I'm seeing those guys comment on this and they're talking about it. But it's getting buried. Like it's not really getting talked about enough because it's just amazing how you can just change the salesman and change the economic conditions and the cultural conditions, and it's the same fucking deal. And everybody's like, yeah. They're like, no, no, no. And then they're like, oh, yeah, totally. Oh, it's Trump. Trump's bringing the deal. Sweet. And that's why um, Trump is the ultimate weapon for the New World Order. He's the ultimate weapon. He is the best salesman in the world. He's the best salesman in the world. Nobody can do a deal like him. And everybody knows it. And that's also what makes him the best salesman in the world, is that that's what everybody knows him for. And he's also got a lot of charisma. But he's a bona fide narcissist. I mean, the guy is, he's completely obsessed with himself. Um, and if you have ever looked at any of the stuff that isn't so rosy colored about his reputation, it's pretty brutal. I mean, is what it is, right? I don't care about him so much, but it is part of the point, and it is part of how we are where we are. Is that um, is I believe Trump made a deal with the establishment, the Anglo-American establishment, call it whatever, the New World Order. He made a deal with them to go along. And did you not notice after that assassination attempt how all of a sudden the media, which was Orange Man bad for the last, I don't know how many years, all of a sudden it wasn't Orange Man bad. All of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, Trump's not so bad, because they just galvanized everybody for him. And this is what these people do. This is what they do. Why would Trump, who's like he's an egomaniac, narcissist, Um, a guy who really cares about wealth and being absolutely rich, why would he not look after himself? Because he loves America? But what does that even mean? Does he love America or does he love his investments in America? Does he love America or does he love his family in America? I mean, I'm seeing a lot of, rah rah Israel coming from the Trump train and the crony establishment elites that he's put into his cabinet, just like he did before. Oh, I'm going to drain the swamp. I'm draining the swamp, and then he just like reinvigorates the swamp. He just kind of cleans the swamp up a bit, but it's still full of a bunch of swamp creatures. And the guy is a slave to money. I mean, it's all in my to me, it's all about just using your eyes. I mean, um, look, just look at his values. Okay, like he's got gold things everywhere. Like, is his presentment just saying like, look at the optics? Okay, the private jets, the just completely over the top um, wealth, the bragging about the wealth, the status shit. Are the optics any different than the Rothschild family? Really? The only difference is that Trump's more open about it because Trump isn't a Rothschild, and Rothschilds don't have to brag about how rich they are because everybody knows they're rich. But have you ever seen any videos of like the Rothschild manors and things like that? It's the same type of opulence. And so now that's not just to say because Trump's a rich guy with lots of big stuff, and so are the Rothschilds. That wanted to say that's not the point I'm trying to drive home here. I'm just saying like consider the optics. Would it be for a guy who has that much value on those things? Is it all that surprising that he would just take a deal? Because the thing with um, everything in this world is it's never as simple as you think it is. We all think that we have this idea of that we know what's going on behind the scenes. We don't fucking know shit. We might have some ideas of the general tides and the way things are moving, but the details we don't know. Um, and everybody knows that's how life is because whenever you see a situation from afar, you come to certain assumptions based on, maybe past experiences or context or whatever, culture, society, economics. But then when you get into it, you discover that there's a whole litany of things that you missed. And that's just the way life is. So things are always more complicated than we think they are. And they're not always so black and white. It doesn't necessarily mean that, let's say, Trump did some kind of deal with the New World Order in some way. Um, that deal could be as complicated as you can imagine. It might not mean that it's just he's in the bag and they got him compromised doing pedo shit or whatever. Who knows? Um, it could also just mean that he's ultimately serving himself. So just for context to consider that. Um, but you know, this whole coming back to the big picture with it all. Um, so I kind of made the case that Trump is reinvigorating what an old idea. And if you've paid attention to the New World Order for a long time, like I have, you know that they do that all the time. James Corbett did a great series on it called it's something about trial balloons, and this all comes from stuff you get into Edward Bernays, the author of Propaganda and uh, Public Relations and stuff like that, um, and nephew of Sigmund Freud, who understood psychology and how to program people and manufacture consent. They run what are called trial balloons, so they seed ideas out in one direction over here, another over here. We saw this during the COVID scam. We saw They try some mandates, and because the news is so international, they try some mandates in Australia. They try some mandates in Texas. Try some in California. Try some in British Columbia, so on and so forth, and see how people react. And in today's world, with the algorithm, you can trial balloon like there's no tomorrow. And so I think that's ultimately how we got to this point, is that they trial ballooned this idea of the US taking over Canada. And then they said, let's see what happens if Trump runs with it. Let's just see how people jump on it. And people are on it. And I actually think there's a fucking good chance that this happens. I actually think that it's an inevitability, frankly. Um, but there's other ways we could go with it. Um, the way that the idealist in me thinks it should go is that it if people were more awake, right? Fingers crossed. If people were more aware of how things are, and had a better understanding of the way the system worked, um, this whole idea that Trump could just go and buy a country would wake up not only Canadians, but in turn, it could have a spillover to Americans and everybody around the world to say, who the fuck are you to sell me? Right? Because that's the fundamental question. Who the fuck are you that you can just, with the stroke of a pen, sell an entire nation state with people and property and businesses and hopes and dreams and cemeteries and all the stuff that's on the land. You can just sell it. That it would wake people up to say, yeah, that's a good question. Maybe we should look into who we are and how is it that somebody can do that. But honestly, I'm not seeing that. I wish I was, but I'm not actually seeing that, because I think that's where we could have this great dichotomy, and this is where this kind of brings to the title of tonight's stream, Canadian sovereignty or American annexation, is that that's what it could be, is that Canadians would first say, fuck that, and you know what? Fuck the crown. Forget all of it. Because that's what I think that's what would happen naturally if people said, yeah, screw that, we're not being bought, we're sovereign. But then by just saying that word, and I think that's why you're not seeing a lot of the politicians use that word when they're saying we stand up for ourselves, is because the word sovereignty is a bit of a white rabbit. And if you chase that word, you probably will find the Statute Law Revision Act in Canada, and you'll look at the British North America Act, and then you'll look at the Statute of Westminster, and then you'll look at the Canadian Constitution Act in 1982, on how there's a provision in that act that gets you in this endless loop where the act is not it's not ratified until these language rights are met in Quebec. It's the weirdest thing. Um, but that's gets would get people going, and then the whole thing of Canada would fall apart because Canada is this de facto nation state, and so is the United States. But the conditions are different. And I don't know much about the conditions of the US and how it's de facto. I don't quite understand how it's roped into the city of London and all that, but I know that it is. It all is, everything is commercial paper that goes back to the city of London. Everything. Everything is in the money matrix and it all goes back there. Any countries that weren't in there have been bombed, or siloed off where there's, you know, not much going on there. Um, and so this conversation about Canadian sovereignty would make people go, holy shit, let's just declare ourselves sovereign. And the fact that politics have demoralized us for so long, that's where it should go. But I honestly don't think it's going to go that way. I wish it would. It's just that when I look around, I talked about the average Walmart shopper many times, but it's just what I see. Um, there's so few people that are willing to just own it in their life. And that's just the way it is. We could go on, you go back to Yuri Bezmenov and how we got here, from demoralization to destabilization, crisis to normalization. I think we're about to get into the crisis. We're in from destabilization, we're going into crisis. And I think that's where this big deal could go down real quick with Trump. And going back to the Hegelian dialectic, is that they set it up perfectly. They set up this deal perfect because they demoralized the people of the world with leftist politics for it's been a solid 8 years, really. I mean, it's when did it really started getting retarded? I mean, I noticed in 2014, um, I was no, 2016 is when I really started noticing it. I was going to conferences in the United States and being treated very well. But I was, a pawn in this environmentalist bullshit movement. I was a pawn in that. I admit that now, and it's old news now, but I was part of that. And I saw the wokeness then. I started to see um, uh, people getting woke. And I saw the transgender bathrooms and stuff like that. Even in 2016, I saw that shit in Boston and California, parts of California. And and I could see that this was already demoralizing my space because I was going to all these great I was just into the permaculture stuff and the actual farming stuff. I wasn't into the woke shit. I wasn't into the environmentalist stuff, though environmentalist stuff I was for a period of time, for sure. But by 2016, I was kind of over it. I was just interested in talking shop and helping people, um, liberate themselves with their business and their farm and their home and their homesteads. And I just saw how this shit was demoralizing people. And I'd been a truther for many years prior to that too. So I started kind of just calling it out. And I started to see the sea change of this. And here we are, 2014. It's been 8 years of an absolute onslaught of demoralization through leftist politics, cultural infiltration, um, economic infiltration, political infiltration mostly. But politicians, like people hate politicians now. They hate them on the left and the right. And that's the point. And that's why Trump is going to slam dunk this deal, I think. Because he's the only and I'm no supporter of Trump, but I'm just saying as far as what the general people are hearing and feeling, I think Trump is the only politician besides Thomas Massey, obviously, but he's the only mainstream. Maxime Bernier in Canada. You gotta give people their due. There are some other rational sounding politicians out there. Don't get me wrong, but Trump's the big guy, right? Trump's the Michael Jackson. Trump is the. That's a weird analogy. Sorry, I take that one back. But I just mean in terms of like, there was a time in pop music where everybody knew who Michael Jackson was. That's like Trump is right now. Um, he is the ultimate um, guy, the political guy, and now he's got Elon Musk. Both of them sound really fucking rational, though any of the truthers out there, we all know that's bullshit because we listen to the whole thing, right? And we're going, yeah, no, they're full of brutal stuff. This ass kissing of Israel and fucking this BS Zionist shit. But um, you know, besides from that, most of it sounds pretty rational. You got guys like Elon talk like really pushing libertarian ideas. All the same old crew though, right? I mean, it was the same thing um, even prior to Hitler coming to power. Jewish intellectuals, have you seen that clip of Dennis Prager? I put it on Twitter recently, but he's basically saying that all the isms out there, name an ism, is all created by Jewish intellectuals. And so Jewish intellectuals prior to Hitler the biggest intellectuals on the capitalist side, the biggest intellectuals on the communist side. They play both sides, these cronies. And so they're doing the same thing now. And they're tailoring their language based on real-time analytics that they get from all of us clicking this thing. Tick, 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 like, whatever it is. They get real-time analytics. And so they can play both sides um, better than ever. And so that's another reason why I could see this deal going down is that they're getting really good real-time feedback. And now I want to kind of go into why I think it's going to happen and what it might look like at first. So going back to the North American Union, this idea is really old. It was even the first time I saw it published was in the Club of Rome's book. And I shared an image on X not too long ago. Um, but they wrote that book, Limits to Growth, which was actually, I read that book when I was a liberal. I read that book. But now looking at that book now is where I'm at. I'm going like, holy shit, these people are psychos. They want to depopulate the world, so that there's more for them and less for you, right? Because these fucking people can't get enough. And so um, the Club of Rome, this crony, Canadian actually, Canadian crony, um, it was it John D. Rockefeller and Maurice Strong, who's Maurice Strong is the Canadian, came up with an idea on how we could unify the world, and it was this idea of environmentalism, and that book, Limits to Growth, they get into all that stuff. Um, uh, and there's a book. I think the first book was actually called The Club of Rome. I might be getting mixed up in my titles, so I apologize. But if you just look these guys up, you'll find out what I'm talking about. I'm not as accurate as Richard Grove, my brother Richard Grove. He's got the books out and everything. I'm just a Canadian bushwhacking stoner who likes to riff on ideas and get into the macro of it all, not the minutia as much. But so those guys will really lay that down for you. But anyways, this idea of the North American Union, where they would originally it was in the Club of Rome, was divide the world up into 10 regions, and one of the regions was Canada, the U.S., and Greenland. And I think on that one, it didn't include Mexico. Later, when it became the North American Union, when they were trying to bring that up, it started with George W. Bush. Lou Dobbs did a great presentation on it years ago. It's when CNN was still somewhat actual journalism. And he kind of blew the whistle on it, as did Alex Jones. It included Mexico for that one. But that whole idea got shot down. There was no patriotism at that time. So or patriotism was different. There wasn't, I don't know if it was patriotism. It was maybe patriotism. I shouldn't be using that word. It was the general consensus on the state of national politics and geopolitics in the United States was very different coming out of George W. Bush into Obama. It's very different. The conditions were completely different than they are now under what Trump, under MAGA, basically. So different. And so it just wasn't the time. And they didn't have the salesman because people hated George W. Bush by the end of his 2 terms. People hated him. And the conservative sort of conspiracy crew which was kind of loosely on the right, because Alex Jones before Trump wasn't really left or right. It was just kind of like calling out globalists. Um, and so, anyways, the deal didn't take off. People rejected it completely. But any good salesman knows how to stage the deal. Is in you presented the deal in one way, people didn't like it. So don't just throw it out. Take a little break, circle back, get some new feedback, get some fresh ideas in, and then bring it back. Bring it back under different conditions, because economic conditions are significantly different. Like, people are demoralized. But when somebody like Trump is saying really rational sounding things in terms of, a lot of his economic policy, people are going, hell yeah. So I think there's the reason this is most likely going to happen, and I don't think it's going to happen right away. It might go into even the. I think what's going to happen here is so in Canada, so Trump's won. In Canada, uh, Pierre Poilievre is just going to be a shoe-in. It's a complete shoe-in. The mainstream conservatives in Canada are no different than the Republicans in the United States. Um, but even no, no, it's actually a little different. It's different in that conservatives in Canada are just liberal light. We don't really have real conservatives in Canada. Now we have the PPC, Maxime Bernier's party. That's actually the only real sort of free market libertarian type party. Because even the Republicans aren't that. The Republicans are so big they're just a mixed bag in the US. It's different in Canada. But the globalist policies of the last 50 years have been pushed by the conservatives, liberals, conservatives. It just goes back and forth, and you can go back to policies specifically. And I'm old enough to remember Jean Chrétien liberals to Paul Martin and the liberals, the massive liberal legacy that got broken up by two, or was it three terms of Stephen Harper? Two terms. And they pushed massive globalist policies as well. Foreign Investment Protection Act is my favorite one of 2014, where they gave China indemnity to park military in Canada, develop natural resources, and media hush orders. Okay, that was the conservatives in Canada. And of course, prior to that, NAFTA with Brian Mulroney, absolute crony politician. But so Canada has this history of just wax and waning with liberals to conservatives, and then little periods where the minority parties get a bit more teeth, but very, very few. And the NDP, the New Democratic Party, pretty much just support whatever the liberals do to some degree. It's like, we want to have a carbon tax of 18%, and the NDP are like, no, 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 16%. Like that, those are their arguments. Like there's a fucking joke. It's a joke. And the Green Party are just more extreme than the NDP. They're just more um, like just they're retarded. Their policies will never work. Their de facto leader, Elizabeth May, is a total drunk, just a total train wreck. And then we've got the Parti Québécois, which, they're just a party that will never get elected they can never win a majority because they're only represent Quebec. Because Canadian point I'm trying to make is Canadian politics is a gong show. And because of that, the liberals and the conservatives just dominate it because they just kind of stay in the middle. And so all the conservatives, so the conservatives are going to be a complete shoe-in. And when you look at all the mainstream Twitter accounts now, like that Jordan Peterson interview with Pierre Poilievre, that just like put him into the stratosphere, especially globally. And this is about globalism is more. We have more globalism now than ever. Like global public opinion because of X now is more important than ever. So the fact that Pierre Poilievre's video with Jordan Peterson, I don't know, it's got a lot, something like 50 million or something like that. That's more than there's people in Canada. And I doubt even a quarter of that was Canadian views. But um, it doesn't matter anymore. It's global consensus because of X, because global opinion is more important than national opinion. This is why, in my opinion, as well, the PPC and Maxime Bernier can't get ahead, is because Maxime Bernier doesn't have a global, and I'm not promoting globalism, but I'm just saying like what what clicks with people. Maxime Bernier doesn't have a global persona that appeals to. He's a French Canadian. Like people don't get French Canadians. I love French Canadians. Don't get me wrong. I got dozens of some of my closest friends are French Canadians. And I lived in Montreal for 6 years, and so I like French culture. I like French people. Not saying anything against that. It's just that Bernier doesn't have that charisma that's going to sell to a global audience like Trump does. Trump is a global phenomenon. He's not just an American phenomenon. And so people love him. And that's why um, there's other politicians all over Europe, all over the world that sound like Trump. And so Bernier can't get ahead on that. So Polyev can, because he's a proper bilingual Canadian. He can speak French as well as he speaks English. That is a trait that very not a lot of Canadians have. Usually, if you're one or the other, you have the accent. Though people, when I lived in Montreal, people that grew up in Montreal had the complete fluid accent. Like I had buddies that uh, when they would speak English, they almost had sort of a quasi New York accent, New York Boston type accent, mixed in a bit of Ontario. When they spoke English, that's what they sounded like. And then when they spoke French, they sounded like a proper French Canadian. And so that if you're going to be a politician in Canada, that's almost a requirement. It, as much as I can't stand the bilingual thing, I think it's fucking retarded. I hate it. I hate the fact that in BC, and again, I got nothing against French people. I love it. I love their culture, but it should stay in Quebec. Like why do I need to have a fucking stick of butter in British Columbia have French on it? I mean, it's just it's a stupid thing. And it's another reason why Canada is going to get smoked. Canada is going to get smoked. Quebec is going to get smoked on this. And I'll get into why that's going to be. But um, yeah, Canada. So going back to the demoralization and how it's going to get us there is that uh, the conservatives are going to be a complete shoe-in because they're just supported by all the establishment. And there's a clip of Pierre Poilievre standing in front of a Canadian and an Israeli flag, and he says verbatim, "I'm just a simple goy from the prairies." Like, think about that for a second. Who says that? Who says that kind of shit? I mean, Canadian politicians are known for pandering for sure. They pander. Like um, Trudeau and Polyev, they put a rag on their head and they go and they, dance with a bunch of Sikhs. Like it's absolutely like deplorably. It makes you sick. The level of pandering that they do in Canada, but you can almost if you had to rationalize pandering in Canada, you could rationalize it to the Jeets more than Jewish people because just by numbers. But then that makes you really think. So he's put on a yarmulke and he's pandering to a tiny minority, like Jews in Canada. I don't know. I think it's less than 2%. Um, so you're a simple goy from the prairies standing in front of an Israeli flag. Who are you working for? You know what I mean? Who are you working for? I get when you go and pander to the Jeets just because they've got so many votes. Like they're just so I get it. Not that I justify it. It's deplorable behavior. Like anybody that does that is just it's sickening in my opinion. It's like have some of your own fucking pride. Like be your own man. Don't ass kiss, right? But so Pierre's a simple goy from uh from the prairies. And it kind of just shows you where the allegiances are, especially the position. His position on Ukraine is the same as the liberals. His position on Israel is the same as the liberals. His position on pretty much every geopolitical event is the same as the liberals. His position on immigration is maybe the liberals are saying, I don't know what the number is, but just for example, just to make a point, the liberals might say, we want to bring in 50,000 new immigrants a year in Canada. And then the conservatives are like, how dare you? 45,000. You know what I mean? Like that's the level of difference in Canadian politics that's so lame. And it demoralizes people. So what I think is going to happen is that Polyev is going to win. It's going to be a shoe in, just like Trump. It's going to be an absolute, up here, it's a blue wave. Conservatives are blue here, which I think is more appropriate. The fact that Republicans are red, the color of communism, always bothered me. But anyways, doesn't matter. It's going to be a blue wave, which is a conservative wave up here in Canada. And I predict that they'll take like at least 60, 70% of the House of Commons. We've seen that before historically, so it can happen again. It'll happen. And then during the next, and they're going to throw out the woke. Woke was just created to be a straw man this whole time. And that's why all these truthers think they're getting justice is because they're just burning the woke. But it was all just built. It was built up to be an effigy, anyways. I called this years ago. Go back in my streams. I've been saying this for years. They're going to burn this shit. As soon as the tides turn, they're going to burn it because it doesn't matter. Woke is irrelevant. Migration is what's needed. And so this is the thing that's going to demoralize Canadians. And this is where Trump's going to save the day is that it'll go conservative and it's like, yeah, okay, there's no more pedophile story hour in the book time in the library. There's no more, ridiculous woke stuff. Ridiculous. Like they're gonna get rid of that stuff. They'll get rid of maybe some of the affirmative action programs and things like that that they have for stuff like that. Maybe they'll defund the transgender surgeries like they have in British Columbia and things like that. So there'll be some justice there, seemingly. But then people are going to get really angry about how there's so many East Indians being pumped into this country. Like it's insane. I've been across the country this year, well, at least from Vancouver to Toronto and in a number of places in between. I've been to a lot of the major cities in between. And it's insane. It's insane. It's sickening. It's sickening how this country is being so demographically changed so quickly that people can't even adapt to it. It's insane. And that is going to be the thing that's going to break the camel's back is that a couple of years into Poilievre's term, Canadians are going to be pissed. And Trump is going to be saying, hey, you got to stop this shit. And he's going to he's going to save the day. Um, but just in rhetoric. I don't think he's actually going to say that. I think frankly, the economies need immigration because white people they're not having kids. So in a fiat lending system, you have to have continual growth in gross domestic product. Otherwise, you go into recession. So they've always fought, this is Econ 101 at university. They've always fought that by just importing a certain amount of migrants to keep GDP at a steady rate. This is not a controversial subject. This is like mainstream economics. But that's the reality of it. And so they can't. But what they can do, the solution is going to be very enticing. So I don't think they're going to annex Canada. No, that's not going to happen. That is already rubbing people the wrong way. So Kevin O'Leary just ran a really nice trial balloon. And I don't know if he's in on the scam. I know somebody who knows him and actually says he's a really cool guy, but whatever, doesn't matter. He's trial ballooning the idea for the New World Order, whether he knows it or not. But he's basically saying, no, forget this buying Canada. Let's just create a union like the European Union, which is exactly what the North American Union or the Trans-Pacific Partnership was supposed to be. And it all started from NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. There was even policies before that, treaty policies or treaties. And so what Kevin O'Leary is pitching sounds really good. Uh, am I for it? Not really, because it's just going to get us one step closer to the New World Order as far as a global government, global currency, global religion. Having said that, will I find upside in it? Absolutely, because what I want to explain to you is there's conditions that will go down that some people will do very well. I think the majority of people will do very well with a North American Union type thing, but a lot of people are going to get hosed, and I'll kind of break down that. So, um, so the reason people are going to want to go for this deal in Canada is that they're going to be like they're going to the hangover from the celebration that the Conservatives clean sweeped the Canadian House of Commons. Uh, the hangover will be like the next day. Like it won't the party will not be like MAGA because MAGA there's so much more. It's a bigger show. Americans produce things better, right? It's Hollywood. It's all the top talent go to the United States because the United States is generally speaking, I'm gonna have Canadians that are gonna fucking hate me for saying this, but generally speaking, the United States is a better place. It isn't for me. That's why I've chosen to stay in Canada. But overall, the US has more to offer people. That's why Americans have a higher quality of living. If you value what I value, which is nature and being off grid and being surrounded by God's country, then no, Canada is actually the best. That's why I've chosen to stay here. But I just mean as far as the average Walmart shopper, what they want, right? So, um, uh, somebody says, "Why are you doing the secret society two fingers, two ears?" What the fuck are you talking about, dude? Don't say dumb shit. Make truthers all seem like paranoid. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But why this is going to be a better deal for the average Canadian is because our politics, for one, okay, so first thing is Canadians know more about American politics than Canadian politics. Like seriously, just ask your average person on the street. That's the way it is. Okay. Um, Canadian culture, by and large, is dominated by American culture, much like many European countries are. Like it's not. I I I still love Canada. Like you can choose to get butthurt about this or not, but just bear with me on the facts. Um, so so we follow their culture. Uh, we know more about their politics. Um, all the good stuff comes from the United States. Not all of it. Lots of great stuff's manufactured in Canada and made by Canadians and so on and so forth. Uh, Number four, the best Canadian talent all goes to the United States for the most part. Um, um, there's more talent in the United States as a result of that. So if you're going to, if you want to be an entrepreneur and you're not doing business in the United States and you're a Canadian, you're not getting ahead. Like, trust me, as an online entrepreneur for the last 10 years, I've had three businesses in three different states in the United States over those 10 years. And that's just the way it is. Like, if you want to make money online in Canada and you're not selling in the United States, forget about it. It's like you're counting pennies. So everything is in the United States. The talent, all again, Canadians have there's great stuff in Canada, don't get me wrong, but overall, the offer in the United States is so much better. And this is where it's going to get, where they could turn Canada into basically a natural resource zone. I think that's where this is going to go. And this kind of all fits into the original idea in Agenda 21, what was called the Rewilding Project, where um, they want to just have these big ecological zones where they say we don't want any humans living there or very few, and we just want people in these mega cities. Is that if they create some kind of North American Union, um, and basically Canadians have a deal like the European Union, a couple of things are going to happen right away. First thing that's going to happen right away is Canadian real estate's going to be worth fuck all. And the reason is because if it's now an equal playing field and Canadians can go to the US, why the hell would anybody buy a property in British Columbia like I did? And I got my property at a steal of a deal. I won't tell you the price, but I'm an anomaly because of my skill set and whatever. So the deal that I got, nobody gets this deal. Very few. But why would you buy a place like, say, a shithole in Vancouver for $1.5 million? Why would you buy that when you can literally go across the border towards Seattle and buy the exact same house for almost half the price in a better economy with more purchasing power on your dollar and less taxes, less regulations? So Canadian real estate is going to go fast, and that's going to have some short-term pain because people are going to lose their equity, which should be just brutal for people that are over leveraged. So that's going to have some real short-term pain. But you know who's going to really win in a deal like the North American Union? The number one person who's going to win is the average Joe. The average Walmart shopper is going to win like nobody. And they're the people that want to win more than anybody because they're the people that have been getting shit on by the last 8 years of woke, liberal, communist policies. They're hurting. Like Canadian working class are fucking hurting. Okay. You go talk to the average Joe who's just working 25, 30, $40 an hour even. They're struggling. to just keep up. And so if all of a sudden, and so those people don't have any equity, they got nothing but a paycheck. Okay. Why would they stay in Canada? You get a deal like that. Hell, you're telling me, so you're living up in you know, Saskatchewan. You're living just outside of Regina, okay? And you're struggling to keep up with the bills. And Regina is not even that expensive. Say you're living in Vancouver or Toronto, it's even worse. Like living expenses are off the charts. So you're working and struggling to just keep up. And they say, "Hey, we got tons of work down in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico. Um, Jobs are opening up in Washington, Oregon, Kentucky. Fuck you. Why would you stay in Canada? You have nothing tying you here. Most people don't have kids anymore. You'll leave. So I think this could happen very easily. And what it'll do is it'll empty out Canada. It'll just empty this place out. And this country will become basically a resource mine for America. And there's good and bad things to that. You know, the good, the well, yeah, it's just like a complete mixed bag. It's just conditions. Like it, people like me, I wouldn't leave because I actually that'd be kind of sweet. There less people up here, fucking A. Like I actually like that, but it does have its drawbacks because now there's just less stuff. Like there's less people working. There's nobody looking for jobs. It'd be really difficult to run a business that was bricks and mortar. It could literally just empty out Canada very quick. And then all these people will go bankrupt. I'm sure BlackRock will come in and buy up all their homes. That seems to just work out with everything, anyways. And then there'd be this sort of multiple years of settling where the dust would settle. Like just like when the European Union started, a similar thing happened where because people could just move all over, it changed real estate markets because incentives changed, right? Because you're like, well, now I'm no longer stuck here having to buy in these shitty conditions for a shitty place. I can just go down south where there's tons of inventory. Like the United States, I mean, I do real estate fairly regularly. I haven't done it in a while, but our Homestead Accelerator program in Freedom Farmers, um, we basically look at real estate, 10 to 30 listings a week we list and we comb through hundreds, but it's all homestead real estate, but we still see these big trends is that there's so much more inventory in the United States. There's so much more inventory. Like it's hard to get your head around. Uh, Canadian construction, ask anybody who's involved in large scale construction or even just single family homes in Canada. The construction scene is brutal. It's brutal. And I've been in it for 3 years myself. Different conditions than what most people in construction would be experiencing, but similar, especially with materials and sourcing subtrades and things like that. But um, the conditions are brutal. In the US, overall, I know it's all different state to state, but overall, you can turn and burn a development project a lot quicker than here. So there's just all of a sudden no incentive to be here. So I think if that deal gets pitched in some way, because the way they will pitch it is a North American Union, and Pierre Poilievre will do it. I think it's clear that um, people that there's no political incentive to say let's sell our country to Trump. No, no politician's going to say that. That's political suicide. What they will say is, hey, let's come up with a North American Union. You guys have been struggling so hard in the economy for so long, inflation, taxes, you name it. Let's do a North American Union type thing. Let's loosen up the regulations. Everybody's going to be like, that's a fucking breath of fresh air. Because it is. Because it actually is a breath of fresh air. Um, but it is going to move us one big step towards what the original New World Order plan is: one world government, one world currency, one world religion, is to uh, get everything consolidated into 10 regions, right? And then they just become regions. They're no longer nation states with sovereignty. And I could really see that happening. And um, yeah, we should be having a better conversation about what does it actually mean to be sovereign? What does it actually mean to um, be the masters of our own destiny? And the reality is that we are the masters of our own destiny. You just didn't know it. We actually had the keys to the kingdom the whole time. You just didn't know it. And it's because people don't know anything about the law. And, you know, that kind of is what it is. Um, it's really difficult to learn this stuff just by watching YouTube videos. You have to kind of just go and read. That's what I've done for 10 years now. Um, and you find these things out and you find ways around stuff. And there's all kinds of remedy out there. And it's great. But it's just not a thing that the average person is going to figure out. And so I think that's the main reason that it's just not going to happen. Like, I wish, the conversation we should be having is a constitutional convention. We should be having a constitutional convention, every province in Canada, and we should be deciding how we want to be governed and what that looks like and come to something that we agree on. But the problem is with all these governments, especially in North America, it's a real North American phenomenon, is that our countries are so big in the US and Canada. And it's almost to our demise that because they're so geographically large that you have a hard time finding commonality with people on the other side of the country. Like, West Coast British Columbians, which I'm not, I'm in the interior, but West Coast British Columbians are completely different than Atlantic people in, say, Newfoundland or PEI or places like that, Nova Scotia. The, the completely different accent, different different foods, different customs, just different demeanors, completely different, different economies. Though similar if you're on the coast, fisheries and things like that, but still very different. Just like in the United States, how say somebody in Northern California compare their accent and overall way of being to somebody in Louisiana. Very, very different. That's the problem with the US and Canada is they're too culturally diverse. And that makes it difficult to have a commonality um, that brings people together. Like look at before Sweden, like look at the Nordic countries. Before they all got woke and went completely retarded, they were some of the best countries in the world to live in. Now they're the rape capitals of the world because they've basically opened up their borders and now they just have North African migrants pumping in there, all men, all young men. Um, and so that now, and then that's caused a major hardcore right wing backlash, as is being caused in the U.S. and Canada as well. There's a surging of National Socialist ideas and hardcore nationalism, and it totally makes sense why. And it's completely whether you agree with the principles or not, it's it's uh, it's what has happened, and that's a reaction. But our diverse countries don't want that, and we don't have that anymore. So we've kind of fallen apart. So with this growth in MAGA and this sort of galvanizing of that movement, I think it's going to steamroll Canada. It's going to absolutely steamroll Canada. And Canadians have no idea what's coming because I just think that there's no way this deal wouldn't go through. There's so many people that would want to do it. They're gonna get too much upside from it. Um, Man, it's hard to keep up with you guys in the chat. Sometimes like when I haven't done streams in so long that I used to be able to just like bounce back and forth between like riffing off what people are talking about, but Yeah, let's talk about national socialism. Somebody says Christian nationalism. Let's talk about stuff like that a bit, as part of it, because there is a reaction that's happening, and it's actually making a lot of sense. I don't want to say too many things about Hitler because then this stream will go down. There's way more people in the live stream here than there are in the let's see how many people are in the space. There's 37 people in the space. Um, if I say I could riff on Hitler on X, but I couldn't riff on it on YouTube. This stream will probably just get completely throttled. But you know, guys like Nick Fuentes and folks like that are putting out ideas that sound pretty reasonable when you think about the conditions that we're in. And all these conditions that we're in right now are creating the perfect reaction to the solution that Trump is going to present. Whether man, maybe it isn't exactly Trump that presents it, maybe it's a bunch of people that present it, like Kevin O'Leary is pumping this idea pretty hard. But yeah, I think that's going to happen. And for me, it won't matter much for me because I'm kind of stationed here. I'm not leveraged in massive amounts of debt where I'm going to be screwed if the equity in my home goes to zero. I don't really care if the equity in my home goes to zero. I built a home to to last a long time. And so, but I'm a tiny minority of people, and most people are struggling. And so I think that they could just say immediately, let's go to the US. Why would we stay here? What the hell's what have we got for us? So that's what I'm saying on that. If anybody wants to jump up in the space, I could start bringing some folks in who wanted to kind of chime in, but maybe I'll just take a look at some of what you guys are saying in the comments before I kind of, there's a bunch of other shit I wanted to riff on too, but um, X is the New World Order one platform. There's no question about it. But the thing is, so yeah, let's riff on X a little bit. Um, is the lemon worth the squeeze, basically? Yeah, it is. The thing that is going to happen, I think, with X in the near future is that if people pigeonhole their lives too much into this platform, and I'm on it too, um, and is the lemon worth the squeeze for you? That's the question. But if you're too pigeonholed in that platform and all your relationships are in that platform, they could literally silo you now. So Grok, which is the AI, it's Elon Musk's answer to AI, is fully integrated now in X. And the thing that you have to kind of give him credit for, as far as a genius move, even though it might be a diabolically evil move, is that this AI is now just absorbing everything that we're talking about on X, everything. And if you've seen any of what AI can do these days, whether it's, like I could be AI right now. How would you know? If you didn't actually know me in person, how the fuck would you know? This could be a complete like representation of me. They could sample my voice. They can sample, the AI can go and sample all of my live streams and videos in seconds and have constructed basically a likeness to me that basically they could replace all of us. So what this could be like a Black Mirror episode, but what could essentially happen with X now is they could, so you're on there, you're tweeting and you're going on spaces, you're doing all that, but you're an anon and nobody really knows you. And so they could essentially just take you out, and they've got likeness of everything that you follow. So all the people that you associate with on X, your whole perception of the world as it is on X could be literally replaced. And all of those people that you talk to and interact with could all of a sudden become bots that are representing clones of people that were real, but this happens to everybody. This is like literally a dystopian future that could happen very quickly. And maybe it already is happening because it would be a way to manufacture consent like crazy, is that they could create the likeness of you. And if you are mostly just doing that as part of your life, you wouldn't know the difference. You go to your job that you hate and you kind of do your thing and you're not friends with anybody. And not everybody's like this, but there's going to be some people that will get caught up in this, that you are basically going to be siloed, completely siloed out, and you're not going to be talking to anybody real. It's just going to be AI. And then they take you, the replica of you, and replace you in where you were an X, but now it's an AI bot that's got the incentives and the mission directive, if you will, to toe the line. And so they could completely manufacture consent. Like there's no tomorrow. And I think there's a really good chance that that's already happening, but it could go on scale very quickly. That as soon as politics start to get a bit sketchy and the narrative is kind of wavering, like anytime that Israel or the JQ is discussed, it gets the algorithm kind of tweaks out and it's got to correct um, that they could silo all of us. And for me, eh, I wouldn't really care. I'd just go on doing this, doing what I've been doing. I'm in the real world. And that's just part of the reason I said this at the beginning. I'd riff on this a little bit. It's why I have, it's part of the reason, there's multiple reasons, but that where I have kind of shifted my career back to being in the real world and not so just an online personality um, that many of you have known me of, and I stand by everything I've done. I've admitted when I'm wrong. I'm just a real dude. Um, I've had lots of online products to sell. I stand by all of them. They're good. I'm not a grifter. I sell things that actually help you, do things for you. So I stand by what I've done, but at the same time, I could just turn it off all tomorrow and just go and just go to the real world and be in the real economy and help real people and solve real problems. Because that's actually what I'm good at. That's actually what I enjoy doing. But I've been sort of blessed in my career journey to be able to stack functions, if you will, by, doing one thing and then kind of making that work on its own, teaching it to people, getting an idea out there, and I try another thing. And I've been able to kind of become a jack of all trades in a way by doing that. And I've monetized my entire journey. Um, and yeah, I stand behind everything I've ever done and everything I still sell today. Um, but I'm also realistic in that the economy is going to change. And I also really care about the future. I should really give a shit about the way things go. And so I call things out, and that might get me in trouble. It hasn't yet. My YouTube channel has been completely incrementally getting demonetized for the last year. I haven't really said anything about it because I don't really fucking care, to be honest. But um, YouTube has a really sneaky way of demonetizing you without getting you on any community guidelines, and they just go and they just try to copyright infringe on music or sounds on your videos, and they can just get you tied up in this loop where you're constantly having to fight for the rights for this video to demonetize. So it's kind of like how lawyers can drag you through the courts and just kind of drag you through the mud and make you spend money. YouTube can kind of do that. So they've been doing that to my channel for about a year now, and I don't fucking care. Basically, I just don't care. I don't want to be anybody's bitch. So I'm just kind of like, eh, I'll adapt. I'll try new different things, and and I'll stay ahead. And I've always been that way because I stay ahead of the curve. I see big trends and I act on it. Like I saw a big trend in when I was a full on online entrepreneur. I still am. Like I still have my company. Like I still am, but I've just diversified. Um, but I saw in 2019 this era of censorship that was coming, and I didn't think that I would actually last that long, this long on YouTube. I'm kind of feel kind of blessed that I've been able to stay on this channel for as long as I have, despite my videos just don't get views. Like they completely dethrottled me after the COVID scam because it just I used to get, you 50,000 views in the first 24 hours of a video, even when I had like a quarter of the subscribers. Now I'm lucky to get 10. But whatever, I'm not butthurt about it. I've moved on. But that's kind of how it goes, and that's what they've done. And so in 2019, I saw that coming. That's why I started. It was from the field dot farm at that point, then from the field dot TV, then it turned into Freedom Farmers, and that's why I went in that direction. I didn't want to be just one of these YouTuber guys that has to kiss the algorithm's ass because I hate that shit. I don't when when I watch, and I don't really watch YouTube much anymore because I just can't stand the game. I've been in it for so long. Um, I can't stand the algorithm ass kissing. It's just like if you want to be a popular YouTuber, look at Mr. Beast. You have to do what he does, right? And he's a weird fucking dude. Um, but you just have to make completely sensational, retarded clickbait. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I just want to show people the stuff that I'm doing. And if they like it, cool. That's all I ever wanted to do. When I started on YouTube, I didn't even care about making money. I didn't even know you could make money at it. I remember being down in somewhere in Southern California with my buddy Diego Footer. And he was like, yeah, John Siskovich is making $500 a month off YouTube. I'm like, John Siskovich is making $500 off YouTube? What the fuck? And John Siskovich is a great guy on YouTube who makes videos about pastured poultry and stuff. And he's been a buddy of mine for years. And and I didn't even know you could do it until I heard he was doing it. And then I was like, well, shit, I'm going to try and monetize my YouTube channel. And I did. And it led to all kinds of great things and whatnot. But I've been in the grind of being a content creator. I'm tired of it. Like I'm just tired of being on camera. Um, it, it, it's it's it can have downside effects if you have a family. One thing I've observed, and I'm not going to name names, but number of YouTube creators that you know of that have families and their kids are in the camera all the time. And I'm just not into that. I'm not into that. Um, it's weird enough when you become like a semi well-known person that you meet people who don't know you and then they just assume all these things about you and they pretend like they know you and then if they start getting attached to your kids that are in videos, like that's just fucking weird. I just remember going to conferences and events like that and rubbing shoulders with other big YouTubers and you'd be hanging out with them and the fans would come up and the fans have all these things to say about their kids and stuff, and I was just like, that's just fucking weird, man. I just don't like that. And it's just it's just not reality. And so that's the thing that I've struggled with forever with being a YouTuber. And it's why I'm not a popular YouTuber, is because I just don't give a shit to play the game. I'm just too much of a normal dude, normal in some ways, not in others. But um, and so, anyways, yeah, that whole tangent started with X and just like how this platform is going to get weird. We saw another little sign of it when they took away the blue check marks of a bunch of those guys like Stu Peters and Arthur Quanley and Jake Shields and a bunch of those guys that are, you know, anti-Semites. Um, they took their blue checks away, and that was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Um, and so yeah, it's weird. It's weird. Brett says you could have kept posting on YouTube and not put your kids in. Yeah, of course. And I never put my kids in my videos. My kids only ever ended up in my videos if I was doing a live stream and they just came in and just showed up, and we've told them to never do that. Um, but yeah, that you're missing the point there, Brett. That wasn't my point. My point was that um, it kind of tied into that conversation about being with uh, being kids, but just about having kids in the videos. But um, it's not easy being a public person that's always on camera. And so it's just something that I've just kind of gotten tired of because the internet world has changed a lot. Um, Back in when I launched my first online course back in 2016, it came out the same year that I did my book, The Urban Farmer. Um, Advertising and just getting products online was a gravy train. It was like you could spend $5 on Facebook ads and make 500. It was just like, well, maybe it wasn't that. Well, there's times that it was that good actually. Um, but it was crazy. And now it's completely different because it's completely saturated. But AI and the algorithmic incentive really, hey, that actually that also is an acronym of AI too. Isn't that funny? Because algorithmic incentive. But it's one thing I've observed is that this algorithmic incentive really incentivizes you to do one thing. So to Brett's point about, you could have not had your kids in the videos. Yeah, and I never really did put my kids in the videos, very rarely. But the algorithm incentivizes you to do shameless shit, and slutting your family out is one of them. And if you notice, the biggest, not all the biggest homestead videos, homestead channels, but a lot of them, they just slut out their family. I won't have it, because personal content, like nothing will get more clicks than if you say, "Hey, um, somebody in my family is dying." You know what I mean? Like something really tragic that gets massive clicks. And so people just whore themselves out. And if you just look at what gets views, it's creating drama and clickbait. And I've tried clickbait. Like, I'm not saying that I'm above all that. I'm just saying I don't want to fucking do it. Like, yeah, I've done clickbait. And I'm not saying I won't ever make a video with a clickbait title again. I kind of did it with this stream. It's just part of the thing. It's just the way it works in these platforms. But it sucks because it means you have to sell your soul in a way. Because you can't, when you dilute the idea, you don't present the idea in the best way. And I think it's dishonest. And I don't want to be that way. And so I've always struggled with it. Though I know I have a lot to teach people, and that's kind of more what I'm doing now. I'm more just teaching workshops and stuff in the private and not promoting them online. Or I mentioned it on Telegram and Twitter a bit, but I don't promote them. I don't have to advertise for them. I'm just gonna take my sweater off for a second here. And so I've just been doing that. I don't really have to, I don't know. I don't want to play that game. And so I can, I think we're at an interesting time right now on X or Twitter. YouTube is a ghost town. I mean, I'll get back to posting videos here because I do like it. But more just videos like the state series and the provincial series, that the homestead series that I'm doing. Making videos on the homestead and stuff. Yeah, I'll probably, once the growing season comes back in, I'll probably do that again to some degree, but I don't know. I've always been somebody that kind of gets sick of things in 10 years. I kind of get on to the next thing. So, um, yeah, that's what I would say to that. Barry says face to face is coming back because we want authenticity. I found that to be the exact thing. Like I've been doing these sort of law workshops or whatever in the private. You can't, none of them, nothing with them is online. There's no Zoom calls. You have to be there in person. And it's been amazing. Just traveling around the country and actually just meeting and shaking people's hands and hugging people and really just like having heart to heart with people has been amazing. For somebody like me who's been out doing stuff like this, and in my urban farming career when I was doing bigger talks, it'd be to bigger audiences and stuff like that. It's so refreshing to go back to just being just a real person with people. And I think as this new paradigm we're going into, that's going to be more and more of a thing. It's going to be more valuable, and it already is. Like it is. And so I think people are going to find themselves pigeonholed to some degree um, with these platforms. And it's the main reason I'm not on YouTube very much anymore, though. I mean, hey, I got 400 and something people in this stream. This is great. It was almost up to 500 at the peak of it. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at these days, guys. Kind of just doing my thing on the homestead. Our little family emergency has made it so that I've had to really commit to that. And yeah, it's been difficult to just do the things that I need to do for that, my homestead, still work to pay the bills and keep this show moving along. I'm almost done. I'm almost done. But yeah, somebody says, "Can you show us your water system?" So I'll just kind of look at some of the chat now and I'll just kind of scan through it a bit. And if anybody wants to jump up in the space, feel free to request a mic and I'll pull you up. Um, but yeah, the water system. I'm doing a yeah. So we started to film this course in September actually. I've got this new course coming out. And that's kind of where I'm gonna go more with content because chasing the algorithm game sucks. It's just like it doesn't it's when you get dethrottled, like I don't care about the money on YouTube. I don't because it's nothing anymore anyways. But it sucks when you put so much effort into stuff and then it just doesn't get viewed. It's discouraging. And so it's like, well, you know what? Then I'm just going to make really good content in courses and sell it because then it'll at least be valued. So if at least it's not a number, if at least it's not a volume game, it's a quality game. So it's a quality over quantity game because that's the kind of where you go as a content creator. Do you go quality over quantity? People who just get clicks and kiss the algorithm's ass, they just go for quantity. And so, yes, I will. I have a course coming out. We shot it in September, and we haven't shot the rest of it because the rest of the stuff that I wanted to show in the course isn't completely finished. So yeah, in that course, I do a full tour of the whole water system. So basically going from uh, in the house, how water comes from the well into the house, goes to this manifold system, pumps up the hill up to here, gravity feeds into the whole, all the gardens and everywhere else, greenhouses, everything. And then in the house, there's a pretty badass water system too. There's a rainwater catchment system. Yeah, I will. That's all going to be in the course. Will I do updated, detailed YouTube videos on that? Most likely not. No, I'm just tired of it. So I'd rather just put in the work, crank out the course, done. There it is. It's a legacy piece of content. People can pay for it because it's worth the money, and um, and then I don't have to kiss the algorithm's ass. So yeah. Uh, what else? Thanks, Jace. Jace says I'm sensible. Yeah, I don't know. Somebody says an anti-Semite is somebody who tells the truth. No shit. Um, Curtis, did you do radiant floor heating? Yeah, I did. I'm not using it, but I did. I did put it in the slab of the basement, but I don't find it. I have this. Where am I here? This thing here, that little thing there. That's my boiler shack. So I put a wood fire boiler in there that's actually plumbed to all the buildings. It's plumbed to the cabin, that greenhouse, this greenhouse and garage, and the house. So I can run that boiler and heat all of those buildings with one fire. That's why I put that in there. But I kind of jumped the gun on that system. So I'm not really going to, I'm not using it because boilers burn a lot of wood. So I'm not, but it's there for when I want to say heat everything. I can do it all there. But man, the new house, I'm pretty much just running my J.A. Roby wood cook stove. I'm not even running the furnace. I just run that one cook stove and heats the entire house. It's more comfortable than we can imagine. And even if that fire goes out, the house doesn't get cold. Like I could have like one fire a week in that house, and it would keep it warm, and because it's just so efficient. But yeah, no, I did radiant and floor heating. I put all the PEX in the slab. But yeah, I'm not using it. It's not really much point. Do you have a plan in case of forest fires? Do I ever? I have plans. I have multiple plans for forest fires. I've talked about it many times, but yeah. One thing that's neat about my property is that you can see actually is that we're on a ridge, okay? Yeah, it's weird to look at I can't, it's all inverted when I look at it. But that ridge is all south east facing. And one thing about fires is that fires go uphill, especially when they go fast. They can go downhill, but not very often. And so, yeah, and there's a huge fire break at the ridge there as well. I've got various fire breaks in the trees. I've done a ton of forest thinning over the years, but the area that's in front of my house that goes down, there's very little trees on it. So, fire wouldn't really blow up towards our house. It would only if it came behind the mountain, which is highly unlikely. Fires rarely ever do that. But yeah, I should have put a blue roof on for my roofing. Um, but yeah, no, I've done a massive amount of fire mitigation. I could talk about it for hours. The amount of infrastructure I've put into to mitigate fire, whether it's just being able to move water around the property, having multiple locations where I can pull water from, sprinklers all around, um, just thinning the forest alone. Is like my brother-in-law and we spent about 3 months in the spring thinning out this entire stretch of forest over here, this whole area here. And I put another pond in there. I've got this other pond here. Um, but that was a big flank for me actually. And my neighbor just logged a big strip, kind of not that bald one at the ridge through here. You can see part of it. This here actually is an access. So he logged this strip that gave me a wicked fire break, which could have been more of a vulnerable side. So yeah, I've done a ton about on fire, and more to do for sure. One thing about these fires is there's a trend to where they start, and it's not in rural areas where there's nobody around. It's in smart cities. It's in areas that have high interest in development. So I'm not too worried about it here. My neighbors are also very fire resilient in our area. So that's been a nice part of just checking out the space. Um, that's been a cool thing here too, is just that the people around me are very um, resourceful and come together. And that's a thing that's great about rural areas in general is, you know, people people step up, unlike in the cities. DEWs, yeah, man. I know. Um, it's it's insane what's going on. And I think that stuff's going to continue. So maybe some cans of blue paint for the day. Dude, I mean, do you see the color of my roof? I don't know. I like the color of my roof too much to do that. I'm not worried about the DEWs. I don't think if they're gonna fire those things up, they're gonna make it worthwhile, and they're gonna toast out a bunch of places like Pacific Palisades or, Lanai, Hawaii, or wherever. I don't think rural southern BC is on the top of their list. No, I think I think that this Canada US thing is going to go down, and Canada's just going to be hollowed out. It's just everybody's going to leave because they're gonna be like, why would I stay here? So we'll just be up in the boonies. Like it'll be it'll be like nothing. It'll be like a whole new world. But it'll be interesting because it'll bring a lot of interesting talent, you know, from one way to the other. I could also see um, in a number of years, so say Canada, just there's like a North American Union thing goes through. At first, a bunch of people leave Canada, but then things kind of settle around here, and I could see a lot of white flight from the ghetto cities. I could see people saying, "Hey, you know what? Let's go up to Canada now because it's cheap." And it'll be almost be like the Yukon where they pay you to live there. But maybe they won't because maybe they want to keep it rural and they want to just keep it for climate change, right? But I could see other new opportunities where people just say, let's get out of these shithole cities, minority of people, of course, obviously, and just go to rural areas. I could see that happening. Um, because that's a big thing that is so different about Canada and the United States is the black culture. Like we just don't have that here. We don't have urban black culture in Canada like you do in the States. You you see it in parts of Toronto, but it's not a thing. I've been to the real urban cities where there's that urban black culture. You know what I'm talking about? Um, St. Louis and Memphis, Atlanta, Los Angeles, Oakland. Um, I've been to that. Canada doesn't have that shit, and people are tired of that shit because it sucks. Um, so you ever see that skit from Chris Rock where he's like, "I love black people. I hate N-word." Um, where it's like that's the thing. That's just there isn't that in Canada. We don't have those guys, the just like the thug life guys. We don't have that in Canada. And it's kind of refreshing actually because I've traveled everywhere in the United States and I've seen that shit and it sucks. I don't like those kinds of people. They're rude and not very nice. And Canadians are a lot nicer. That's what I like about Canada. Canada is very polite and nice. There's not a lot of violence. Um, People don't really get angry here. You don't see like crazy road rage and stuff here. I think overall the Canadian offer, for me, I like it. But I think for the average person, they're gonna say, man, let's go down to the US. Canada has a white farmer culture. Not really. I mean, yeah, it does. So, I mean, but yeah, of course it does. So does the US. US has tons of white farmer culture in the Midwest and um doing life. Hey Curtis, what are you smoking? These days I'm back on the indica. I was a sativa guy for a long time and and I got back on the indica because the sativa was just getting my mind too crazy. Um yeah, would love to see an update on your sealed pond. So would I. It's not sealed. I have no update for you. It was just, resources, man. Doing this fucking homestead, I'm not going to tell you numbers, but it is, it takes everything to do this kind of thing. And so last summer, I had way too much shit going on. This summer was a lot more reasonable. Last summer, when I was doing the ponds, I was doing all the machine work constantly, and there was a lot more construction crew last year too. It was like I had four guys going Monday to Friday every day. Um, and I was doing a lot of stuff with them too, and I was doing the ponds. It's just, man, yeah, insane. So no, the ponds, I'm gonna um I'm gonna have to seal those ponds with liners, I think. That's what's going to have to happen because there's too many fractures in them, and to layer bentonite clay in there is is a shot in the dark a little bit. Whereas because if you do the bentonite clay and you layer it the way you're supposed to layer it, pack it down and do all that stuff, and then you fill up the pond and it's still leaking, now it's like, oh fuck, now I gotta drain it all out now. and do it again and then do the liner. So I'm just thinking I'm just going to do the liner. And I'm just going to start with this one here. This pond here I'm going to do first. I'm going to line that one and then I'll do this one later because this one's a lot bigger. But I'm going to do a liner in this one because I put a dock down there. I think I did a video on it in the summer. I want to put a little wood fire sauna down there originally. Duck poop seals. What are you talking about? Man, you guys, no, it doesn't. And how long is that going to take? Okay, send some ducks into my pond. Okay, guys, go and shit in there for how long? That's just ridiculous. No, that's these Looney Tunes permaculture ideas. Yeah, I'm sure ducks seal ponds over time, but I want to have it to swim next summer, and I don't want to be swimming in duck shit. So no, pond liners seal ponds. My soil is so sketchy up here because I'm on rock, and so it's just brittle, and so it just there's cracks everywhere. So yeah, that's the problem with the ponds. If there's no collapse, does it all pay off? That's a great question. It does for me because I enjoy the lifestyle, but um, it already is paying off because the freedom and the lifestyle that we have up here is amazing. I can't wait to be done, grinding it out. And oh, it's already getting better because now we're finally in the house. We're finally a lot more comfortable. So, um, yeah, no, it's a great question. And to be honest, I've kind of thought about that for a long time. It's like you spend all this time um preparing, but that's the thing. I was a prepper after. I was like a home, I was a farmer first, and then I was more of a permaculture guy, at least in my own practice, what I was doing. Then I was a prepper. So for me, this whole thing came about. It definitely I was motivated to do this from when the COVID show started, but I would have done this anyways. So yes, if there's no collapse, it all pays off for me for sure. But it is a good question, and I think for a lot of the hardcore sort of paranoid preppers, that's the thing. And I've seen that in people's mindset where you kind of silo yourself up so hard, and you've isolated yourself so much that you go, yeah, is is it worth it? But we're not as isolated as people think we are. Like, yeah, my homestead looks like we've got a lot around us, no question about it. Like I don't see neighbors ever, unless I want to. They're around, but they can't just walk by. You can't just you're not just out in your garden and somebody pops by like it was when I lived in the city. But we have friends, like we have people around us, friends and family. Like we're not as isolated as people think we are, just when they look at the images. So um, yeah, I think rural living is where it's at. It's what I've chosen and what we prefer, especially when we know what the alternative is. So, because living in the cities is just goodness. I mean, I go to Kelowna. And we're not too far from Kelowna where we left, and yeah, it's um, it's bleak. The amount of homeless people there now is it's just so sad. So, we're happy where we are. Have I skated on the pond? Yeah. Last winter we were skating on the pond all the time, and it was sweet, but they were kept leaking, and so it was sketchy because the pond would freeze and you'd get like 6 inches of nice frozen ice, but then the water would drop out and then the ice would crack, and so it's kind of sketchy. So you have to be you have to be really careful about that. Howell Bastion, thanks for the super chat, buddy. Looking good, my guy. Keep spreading the good word. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your support. Um, CWS says it wasn't YouTube. You were a gardening megastar that turned into an anti-woke ranter. You just call yourself a truther, but you're basically the same, except the opposite, just as bad. Yeah, thank you. I agree. I know to you it might seem like you're insulting me and all that, but yeah, you're 100% correct. That's exactly where I am, and I'm not ashamed of that at all. Because I far prefer the truth than, you know, yeah, I don't know if I was ever a gardening megastar. I think I could have been if I would have stayed on that course and just, done what like what's his buddy out of California did, Eric Epic Gardening, I could have done that kind of thing. I just didn't want to. It just wasn't where my heart was. When when the COVID scam started, I just couldn't help but call it out. And I'm fucking glad I did because I know I saved a lot of people's lives. I've had people come up and tell me that in person. So, um, yeah, I mean, buddy here, CWS thinks that, you know, I guess some people like to insult others, and it makes them feel better. And so I hope you feel better, buddy. But no, I think you're absolutely true. You're right. I am. But I'm not ashamed of that because my life has led me to the place that I'd rather be. I'd rather have my integrity. I'd rather know that when shit was going down, I called it out and I didn't fucking just care about getting paid. But I've done all right for myself. So like I can't complain. Like, okay, I could have made a few more $1 million maybe, but so what? I'd still be doing the same thing. And I have friends that have way more money than I have, and they're not as far ahead on their homestead. So it's not all about money. It's just about priorities and what you want to do in your life. And so for me, um, yeah, those are my priorities, and money isn't my number one priority. Don't get me wrong, I'm a capitalist. I like to make money. I'd rather be successful than not, but at what cost? And so for me to just continue on making the same old boring gardening videos that have been made 100 times before is just to me, it just wasn't inspiring. I just tired of it. So, um, you know what though? But calling shit out, um, I have to say, um, ever since I kind of came out of the closet as a truther and started calling the shit out, the people that I've met during COVID and all of that, and even still today, are the nicest people I've ever met. And I've built more real relationships with people than I ever did just in the superficial world of being a, as you said, gardening megastar. Um, I just don't really care about that stuff. Like I don't care about the limelight. I just I just don't fucking care. Maybe I did for a while. Maybe I think I got caught up in it a bit, but no, I definitely didn't really care. And I get comments like this all the time. Like Mushroom Mesa says, "You were one of my main influences starting my farm." Like, thank you. That's awesome. That means something to me. Uh, but it's like people change, right? So, I had a lot of back in the day, I had a lot of people who were inspired by my original work, and then they got really butthurt when I started kind of sounding anti-woke, right? Um, but what are you gonna do? Like, you don't own my opinions. Like, you're offended that I've changed my opinion or that I've voiced an opinion that you don't share. It's like, toughen up, cupcake. That's the way the fucking world is. People just assume in this internet world, because you get to interact with people in a way that we hadn't seen, in the TV realm, that people kind of get this ownership over your personality. And it's like, dude, yeah, I'm sorry. You know, I've met people that in the real world that I thought I knew and then turned out to be nothing that I imagined. And it's like, yeah, okay, next. Who cares? You know, people prop people up too much. Like, um, And I've tried to be as sincere and down to earth with people in the real world um, forever. I've never been the kind of guy that you couldn't approach. And so um, I never wanted to be that guy. And so, hey, Daniel. Hey, buddy. Yeah, yeah, this will be available. I'll keep it up. It's probably late. Any of you guys on the East Coast, man, my goodness. I'm sorry. It's just I got family obligations, and so I can't do these things, early anymore, at least not right now. And so that's why I've been going into Twitter Spaces because it's been convenient and non-committal, and it's just been like easy to do, and it's a fun way to talk to people and get ideas out into the ether and all that. So like Big Scammer BB, yeah, exactly, yeah, actually rip people off and do all that shit. And it's like, there's one thing I wanted to say actually. Uh, this is another macro idea, especially as we go into this paradigm of where social media, especially X, could literally silo you out and then replace your world by AI bots and then replace you with an AI bot. So everybody who's seeing you is not actually seeing you. They're seeing your likeness of. There's a bit of a pattern that I've observed in online conversations, whether they're um, writing, and that's what I like about X is I do like to write. I enjoy writing. I'd like to write another book at some point, and I really enjoy writing. And my English is terrible, and I'm a layman, but that's what editors are for, right? So, but but I like that on X. But one thing you can observe in online behaviors, there's kind of like there's three conversations, and there's three types of conversations. And this goes back to a great quote from, I believe it's Eleanor Roosevelt. She says, "Great minds talk about ideas, average minds talk about events, and lower minds talk about people." And as we go through all this shit, and you're trying to siphon through everything and trying to kind of see, um, trying to make sense of it all. Um, as somebody who's been paying attention to this stuff tirelessly for 25 years since my dad told me about the Federal Reserve, um, really pay attention to that quote in that the people you're engaging with, how are they asking you to spend your time with them? Are they asking you to talk about ideas and big picture things? Are they asking you to talk about today's news cycle? And we drift in and out of all these. I'm not pitching you to say that I don't do any of these. Like I've fallen into this. Like I got into a bullshit thing with Owen Benjamin, right? Um, which was the first thing that's ever happened to me in a public type thing. But um, and then the third thing is talking about people. Is that when you look at how this machine is asking you to spend your time, and this is where I think you could start to identify the trickery in it, is if it's asking you to spend your time in the minutia, talking about bullshit, talking about um, talking about just like low level shit. You're just talking fucking to whoever. You're talking shit. It's like what I had with Owen, that little thing that we had. Um, that's bullshit. It's a complete waste of time, right? I'm not going to go into a whole thing about that before I spend enough time talking about that. But if the machine is asking you to spend your time at the lower levels, don't spend your time doing that. Get back to the ideas. Get back to the big picture stuff. Don't get caught up in the minutia. Don't get caught up in the BS, the he said, she said stuff, because that's where people always get kind of fucked around. And that's where you just waste your time and you waste your life. And it's not it's not productive. And that's where I look at some content creators when I look around online and I see, you know, how are people asking you to engage? When I present ideas on X, um, I'm trying to talk about ideas and I try to have a polite discourse with people. I don't like when people come in and do that kind of dumb shit that, people who don't have a lot of friends in the real world, that's how they talk. It's like people who just only have friends online, who will just all of a sudden say something really rude to you. Like sometimes people say to me in the chat, but I roll it off because it's just like, this is online retarded shit. This is not real world shit. Um, because that's how people who spend most of their time with online people are. They don't have the actual um, politeness and cordial civil behavior, which is necessary to having real conversations in the real world. But this whole online thing has made it so people can become really rude. They'll just say things that are really rude to you, and you're like, "Would you say that to me in the real world?" Hell no, they wouldn't, but they do online because that's what it incentivizes. Hey, I'm gonna bring in another speaker here real quick. I'm gonna Mo wants to come up and come on up, Mo. Mo. So folks, we're bringing in somebody from the space. How you doing, brother? Super, man. What's on your mind? Ooh. Oh, right on, right on. Early morning in the Netherlands. How are things going over there right now? Right. Welcome to the New World Order. Ex Right. Hey, so give me a little bit of insight on what happened. Um, because when did when did that what year was it that the European Union fully came into effect? Right. It's been that long. And tell me what was there a thing or was I just talking out of my ass when I was talking about real estate? Because I heard this that there was a that it kind of shook up the market with real estate because places that were overvalued, people just didn't want to buy there because they could go somewhere else cheaper. Like what happened with that? Do you remember? Right. Right. Whereas in a North American Union, we wouldn't get that kind of thing because everybody speaks English. So it would, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. That's a really good point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because those circumstances will make the economic mobility a lot faster because people can all of a sudden just go anywhere. And so, like you said, yeah, the lower classes will benefit a lot, but yeah, people who are holding real estate are going to be in trouble if the real estate becomes undervalued.
Yeah, because here in the Netherlands we have property taxes, but it's not that high. But the regular tax burden is much higher. So yeah, you I don't know how it is in Canada. Is your property tax also high, or is like
Not
the United
really.
States?
No, I actually find property tax in the US on average to be higher, but that's
Mhm.
only me looking at rural real estate. I'm sure in single family homes or urban, it's probably different. And I don't know actually, but yeah, I mean my property taxes up here are insignificant. They're they're yeah, it's nothing to be concerned about at all. But I've seen places in the US where it's like $20,000 in some parts of Arizona a year. So
Yeah, so if you calculate that, so it's almost like a full income, almost like 2,000 a month just for property taxes.
yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
That's so yeah. I hear you about yeah people moving for economic benefits, but it's also going to be some things are going to be much cheaper, and other things are going to be more expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Needless to say, it's going to shake things up for sure. And yeah, the future is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, the future is going to be really interesting. Uh, like I don't live in a big city or something like that, but it's like what you say. You have a lot of immigration also here in Europe,
Oh yeah.
and but everything is going to start leaning right. It's not like here it's like it's like a new cabinet, but still nothing changed like from the old one. So it's always like the team for the people, and after 2 years of not changing much, they say, "Hey, we need to change again." So
Yeah, exactly.
things are taking on a worldwide level, so that's a good thing. I think everybody needs change, and then see how you can maneuver through the change.
Yeah, that's it, brother. That's it. Well, hey, thanks for coming up, Mo.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Have a good night for you guys over there, and maybe some talk to you some other time.
Yeah, you too, man. Take care. Yeah, so interesting insights there from brother in the Netherlands. Um, somebody says here, property taxes is such bullshit. Got a lease from the government, never actually own or anything. Well, that's the thing too. When it comes to ownership, we don't actually own anything. We just have these titles, right? In Canada, the crown holds the legal title, and you get the equitable title, which is the right of use, which is really everything because you're on the land, but the crown holds this, this sort of imaginary title, which I don't know what the hell does it mean anyways, but yeah, it's crazy. Contra Fiddle Chris says, "What's the next psyop?" I don't know, man. It's constant psyops now that I can't even keep up with it all. Um, I but I have to admit I do enjoy because like it's sort of a guilty pleasure. Like I know that at least in my heart, and maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Um, but my heart's telling me that Trump and Elon are fully part of the New World Order now. That's what my heart and my gut is telling me. I could be wrong, um, but I am still enjoying the overall, like a guilty pleasure of the narrative that it's right wing, just in the sense that um, liberal wokeism got so retarded that it's just made people go crazy, and it's it's somewhat satisfying to watch that stuff get thrown out. But and that in and of itself is actually a psyop because they built that up to tear it down. Do you think any of these top sort of Jewish bankers who are throwing money at all this woke stuff, like George Soros type guys. Um, do you think they're woke? I mean, some of them are gay, many of them are gay. Okay, but do you think they really are into all this woke stuff? No, that's just for you. That's for the goyim, right? That's just for the Gentiles, right? Like that. That's not for them. That's for you. To destroy your family, right? So woke was always going to get burned. And it's the perfect straw man because people got so angry about it that they are really enjoying um, watching it burn. And I have to admit, I'm kind of enjoying it too. At the same time, there's so much fucking content out now that um, it's hard just to like keep up with all of it. There's just so much stuff. Um, I've just been going down the Hitler rabbit hole, man. It's been a hell of an interesting an interesting one because it's just far out when you go into that. How like it's one thing I've said for the longest time is okay, if you woke up during COVID and you saw all this stuff going on and you realized this big picture and holy crap and you get the sort of the magnitude of the conspiracy and you go okay well if you can understand that logically that it is possible to pull off a big lie because compartmentalization and a bunch of other reasons continuity of government how they can do all this stuff um uh how far do you want to go back to like say, well, where did the lie start? So did it start at COVID? Obviously not, right? Okay, well, where do you go back next? Go back to 9/11. Oh, for 9/11, where do you want to go back? Just keep going back. JFK, the UFO file or whatever, right? Pick your poison. It's just that when you start to look at things that have been in the public narrative for so long, like World War II, what happened in World War II. And if you've been a truther around for a while, you can actually look at that now. I hope you can, and just remove your feelings from it and just look at the facts. And I'm not going to go into it on this space because this live stream will get taken down pretty quick if I get into that. Um, but the cool thing about that whole rabbit hole is that it's very easy to find information on because they can't bury it enough. They can't. There's so much counter evidence out there and testimony that they just can't bury it. But perhaps with this shift to where AI is being integrated into X, where this is going, is that that's what it could be. You could actually start to completely rewrite history, and we saw woke do that. Tearing down statues, kind of big book burnings in a way, um, especially with online content. That the framework of that was set up and now the politics has changed. So the pendulum has swung back to the right, but the mechanism to rewrite history is all still there. They're just not doing it with a woke flavor anymore. They're going to do it. They're going to kind of co-opt populism and ride this populism wave because this is what the New World Order do is they always um, infiltrate the movement and they just do a slight diversion towards a lie. They don't take you 180 degrees going one direction and then flip you another direction. That's not it doesn't feel real that way. They slightly divert you. It's kind of like even in the thought of in the Matrix movie where I think it's in the first movie when Morpheus or his team are explaining to Neo um, the different iterations that existed in the Matrix and how they at first they tried just this utopia and nobody bought it, so they rejected it. They had to make it kind of real. That's what they have to do. That's how these psyops go is that they have to, whoops, what happened to the space here? Oh no. Uh-oh, the space crashed. Shit. Whatever. I don't have time to manage it. The space crashed. Sorry, folks who are in the space. Um, I'm just gonna keep on this tangent. They have to make it kind of believable. And so that's why they've kind of come into the populist right, is that it is believable because we can all feel that there is an actual um, uh, there's an actual rising up of people. That's real. There is an awakening. I believe that that's real. And they want to get control of that by getting a hold of as much as they can of that narrative and just slightly skewing it. And that's where you get these real big divides in the left and right paradigm, is that like, well, not the left right paradigm, the right and right paradigm, sort of the neocon paradigm versus the libertarian paradigm. They really split the right with that. But a lot of people right now are just, they just make up excuses for Trump. Like they make up excuses for the shots, and he still thinks it's the greatest fucking achievement. It's unbelievable that this guy says this, and then people go along with it. But they've completely co-opted the right through that. And people are going, yeah, all this money to Israel and the shots, whatever. At least he's throwing out the woke. But it's like that. That's the point, dude. Hey, Tammy, thanks for the super chat. Curtis, I see the same play that the Zionist ran on my people being ran white people here in America. They divided and conquered big time, big time. But that's a challenge with the whole like JQ, the Jewish question. The challenge with a lot of that is, it from what I've seen, and I've noticed it in going into these Twitter spaces, because I've been going into a bunch of these spaces that are sort of like white nationalist, Christian nationalist type spaces, and it the opinion on that matter also really divides white people as well. That's where that whole thing gets kind of nuanced and complicated, is that um, there's a lot of different opinions amongst white people about that kind of stuff, though it's becoming pretty galvanized, especially here in Canada. Like the East Indian thing, the Jeet thing is insane in Canada. It's fucking insane. And it's actually uniting a lot of Canadians to say enough. But is that going to be recognized in politics? I just don't think it is, because until the banking system is fundamentally changed in Canada, um, there's there's nothing that's going to ever change for the better, because we essentially print money at interest for no reason. There's no reason why we need to print money at interest. We could just print money and have inflation. And that, I would actually, as a guy who's been an anarchist for the longest time, and I understand uh, macroeconomic policies and such, um, I don't I don't mind inflation. I would actually, inflation, when I look back at inflation over the last 20 years, say prior to COVID, it was totally manageable. Totally manageable, because innovation and efficiency um, kept up with costs. And conventional macroeconomists will tell you that. That's how inflation doesn't become a deal. And they're partially right. Um, but after the money printing gravy train of COVID, there's just, inflation's insane. Like I'm shocked every time I go out and buy stuff. Shocked. Um, in my entire construction build, the only thing that wasn't crazy expensive was my countertops, because I did concrete countertops. Everything else was like shocking how expensive it is. Um, I bet you'd have a great conversation with Myron, Jason Myron Chuck. Never heard of him. Um, yeah. Brett says your golden goose is YouTube. It's not. It's not anymore. It's not. Nothing. YouTube doesn't do anything for us. Our